What's going on, guys? 8-Bit Glitch 79 here, and you're watching Christopher Pico, the old ass retro gamer.
Hey everybody, what's up, Mondane? How's it going? Tease what? Tease what? Teasing? What am I teasing? Welcome to the new Video Game Collection 2022 live stream. Today I'm going to be talking about the Sega Game Gear games that I have in my collection, the Tiger Game.com or Game.com. I don't know how you're supposed to say that. Games that I have in my collection, sadly. And just to get it out of the way, I added one separate game to what I'm going to talk about tonight. Just number one, like I said, to get it out of the way. Number two, because I realize I don't have that many Game Gear games, and I definitely don't have a lot of Gamecom games to talk about. So this will be a very short stream tonight. So like I say, every one of the wow, it's been another long day. Why is it every single day that I want to stream as the days that I have the hardest time at work? Conspiracy. Every one of these streams, I bring up why I do these collection live streams, and it is for reasons. One, it's not to brag. It's to catalog what I have in my collection just in case something bad happens. Number two, it's good content for the channel, keeps everything alive. Three, lets me interact with people like Mondane here. It's awesome. Chit-chatting. And number four, it's really fun. So let's get into the Game Gear. So I actually do own a Game Gear right now. I got it from my buddy Felix the Brett, who runs the Batterad Nerdatorium page on Facebook. I've been doing deals with this guy basically since I got back into collecting. I'm not really sure where I met him online. I think it was in some group on Facebook, some gaming group, and we started chit-chatting, and usually this guy goes out and buys lots of games every week. Like every week I get pictures from the guy, like, look at this crap I found today. I was like, Jesus Christ, where do you get this money? He has like almost a complete Neo Geo inbox Neo Geo game collection. Like not the ones that came in the cardboard boxes. We're talking the legit retail releases. It's nuts. YouTube curse? Ooh. But yeah, I picked up a Game Gear from Felix about less than a year ago. I want to say this was like toward the beginning of this year. What is going on here? YouTube curse? What are you talking about? Yeah, I got this from him less than a year ago, and it's okay. I think I need to clean the... I just knocked off the damn battery port because I'm a dum-dum. Yeah, I think I need to clean the battery ports because this thing, like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I did have a Game Gear back in the day. I actually bought it when I graduated high school. I graduated high school. The following day, I had like a graduation party, and like my parents invited friends, family from out of town came to the party. People that I worked with, friends of mine from school came, and you usually get money for graduating. At least back when I graduated, you did. I don't know how it goes now. But like I got so much money the worst days at work. Oh yeah, I know. Every day that I do a stream, it's like either the traffic is horrible on the way home and it takes me forever and I have like 3 minutes to throw everything together before I'm supposed to start streaming, or I get worked to death. And today was definitely the worked to death stream, or to the worked to death stream. See, I can't think with the brain. Might as well just be hemorrhaging out my ears right now. Like, I cannot focus. So I got all this money for my graduation from the party. I got enough to buy my first car. It was a used piece of crap, but, it got me to college, to and from home and college and to work. And I did have enough left over to spend on something frivolous. And that was a Game Gear. I bought a Game Gear, and I bought 2 games off the start. So I don't recall if it came with a game or not. I don't think it did. It was the original release. It wasn't the one that came with the purple Game Gear logo on the side. It was like the original release. I don't think it came with a game. And if it did, I don't remember what it was. It might have been columns, if anything. Whatever. The games I bought on my first, when I first got it were Streets of Rage and Vampire Master of Darkness. And I played the crap out of this thing. I went whole hog into the Game Gear. Like, I remember I went to work because I was working at Kmart back then. I went to work. We were selling Game Gear stuff there. I bought the little magnifying attachment that you attach to the front of the screen. It stood out like this far from the screen to actually like magnify it so you can see it more clearly. I bought like the belt thing that you could hang off your belt that had batteries in it so you can keep this thing. This thing is a battery vampire. So like I had like the charging station thing that I could carry around with me. It was nuts. I had games all the time. What's up, Justin? How's it going? Too much blood in your caffeine. Tea will help the brain. Now I got my Gatorade right here. I think I'm a little too dehydrated. I just need to fill myself back up so I can piss it back out later. But yeah, I played it all the time. I basically forgot what the hell my Game Boy was. I want to say for a good year and a half, 2 years, I was like, Game what? Game Gear. Game Gear. Game Kid? What's that thing called again? The little black and white pea soup pukey thing? And then I also forgot what my Lynx was, because as much as I liked my Lynx, the games were kind of hit or miss, but I was like getting ports of, well, what I thought were ports of Genesis games on the Game Gear, so I would focus more on that than anything else. I was getting Streets of Rage. There was Sonic games. There was like Master System games that were showing up. What's up? So I loved it. And then, when did I start losing interest in it? Probably around 2000 or around 1996-ish. So I bought it in 93. Rygar was solid on the Lynx. Yeah, I have a lot of Lynx games that I actually really do enjoy. It's just that, like I said, I felt like I was getting like the home console experience in my hand. The Game Boy tried doing that. I don't think it really pulled it off. Stream freeze? It looks okay for me. Hey, Mondane, does it look frozen to you? But yeah, I was playing like what I thought were home ports. There were actually more ports of Master System games. But and I just lost interest in it. Like I say, around I think 1996, like when the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 1 and the Saturn were the thing. I was just kind of like, that was kind of when I like set aside handhelds for a long time. Like I didn't give a crap about handhelds until probably 1999. That was when like the Game Boy Color, I think, dropped. And I wasn't really interested in that either. And then like I eventually was like, I should probably have something to play, while I'm at work. Because at that point I was working at a limousine place in the office doing the billing stuff. I did have a Nomad back then. So I would bring Genesis games to play on the go. But that thing was really bulky, and that was a battery vampire too. So the Game Boy Color ended up being the way that I went. A completely different console. We'll talk about that later. So let's get into these Game Gear games. Some of these are ones that I had back in the day. My goal, once again, was to get all the games that I owned back when I first had the console. So back in like 1993, 94, 95. But I do have a good number of them. I also have a lot of them that I wanted to get but never had a chance to. So let's start off with Adventures of Batman and Robin. I picked this up at the Midwest Gaming Classic, I think in 2019. I think it was the last one that I went to. And I was really excited about this because I was under the assumption this was a port of the Sega Genesis game. And at that time, the Sega Genesis game, as well as the Super Nintendo game, even more so the Super Nintendo one, were very expensive. So I was like, hey, I want to play this game really badly. I know I hear everyone talking about how awesome it is. If I can get it on a Game Gear and play it that way, that'll tide me over until I can get the money for the full console version. Turns out that's not the case. It's its own game, and it is not good. I booted this up once I got home from the convention to see if it worked, and I was like, yeah, this is not fun. Like, Batman controls like ass. The screen, the way like the scrolling happens is so jerky, and it's very discombobulating, and it made my eyes cross. It felt that way for a couple of moments, but like, he controls like crap. The way he jumps is shit. The fighting mechanics are garbage. I do not like it. I do not. Then I eventually did get the Genesis game, and I was like, this was more what I thought it was going to be like, and I like that one, not so much this one. So I don't recommend it. If you're a Batman completist, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. But for me, not so much. Pooey. Internet decided it needed to shit itself a little bit. And you guys know me, Mr. License Games. Well, not like that wasn't a license game that I just talked about, but one of my little goals that I set for myself, I've probably talked about this in every other stream that I've done so far about the collection, was to get all the games based on Alien 3. And I do have every one of them now. One of them is for the Game Gear. So Alien 3, this is... Okay, so you have the Genesis game. The Genesis one was the one that got the most ports. The Super Nintendo one is its own thing. The Game Boy one is its own thing. The Genesis one is the one that got ported to the Master System, the Nintendo, and the Game Gear. So this is a downgraded port. Like, this is basically a Master System port of Alien 3. And it's not bad. It's not great. I would rather play the Genesis one or even the Nintendo one for that matter. But it's a side-scroller where you're playing as Ripley in the prison from the film. And for some reason, there are aliens all over the goddamn place, unlike the movie. There are weapons all over the place. You start with 4 weapons that are very OP, if you ask me. Unlike the movie, which this is based on. And you basically have to go around these maze-like levels and rescuing all the cocooned prisoners before the time runs out and a chest burster pops out of their tummy. And then do that 3 times or clear 3 stages, fight a boss, rinse and repeat 5 times for a set of 5 stages with 3 stages within that. It's a good game. It's not a great port. Like I said, if I were going to play this anywhere else, it would be on probably the NES, I think, is the better one. The Master System one is a little choppy. This one's a little choppy because it's on the Game Gear. What's up, VGM? How's it going? Good platformer, not a good Alien 3 game. Yeah, I've brought it up every time, but like the way the movie is set up is it's Ripley on a prison planet where there is no weapons at all, and there's one alien running around murderizing people, and there's a queen inside her that, it's taking its time to, work its way out of her system. But when it came to the video game, how do you work that into a video game? I'm sure that LJN, who licensed this, was trying to figure out a way to make it into a video game when you kind of have limited options available to you. And they were like, screw the movie. We'll take the environment from the movie. We'll take the prison and the prisoner aspect of it. And, the fact that Ripley's bald. And we'll just say the hell with that and just give her every weapon that's been shown in an Alien movie at this point and have aliens running all over the joint. But whatever. I still really enjoy these games. Laughing, joking, numbnuts. Alien Isolation's how you do it. Back then, they probably couldn't have done something like that, with the 8-bit systems and all that, 16 bits. Now I have Axe Battler. What is it? A Legend of Golden Axe. This is actually the UK version of this game. I got this at the Midwest Gaming Classic, I think in 2018. I got this from that table that was run by the Atari Age guys who were selling the entire collection of a member of that forum who had passed away. And they got together with the guy's wife that died, and she gave them permission to sell his collection because they wanted to raise money for the dude who died, his daughter, so she can go to college. So I was willing to give them a lot of money. I did give them a lot of money to help them out. And this is one of the games I picked up. It was definitely cheaper than getting the American release of this, but it is a RPG kind of like Legend of Zelda in the Golden Axe universe. It's kind of a ripoff, if you ask me, but pretty awesome. I would never be able to own this. I think, what is this called? Golden Axe Warrior on the Master System, but I can play it at least, so I'm happy about that. I have not actually put a lot of time into it. I basically just tested it out on my Retro Freak to see if it worked. It did. I put it on the shelf, and I was like, I'll play that later, and later never came. But I really should start like making a list of games. 2023 is going to be my new year of the RPG. It has to be. I've been buying all these RPGs. I need to start playing them. 2020 was going to be the year of the RPG, but COVID put the kibosh on that because then I ended up working more than I ever did. And I just did not want to come home and like put all that time into a game. I basically just wanted to come home, maybe throw a movie on and fall asleep. I was always exhausted that year. Another licensed game next, and that is Bram Stoker's Dracula. I kind of set a little mini goal with this also to get all the games based on this movie, and I have, I think, all of them except for the Genesis one. But the Genesis one also is like the Super Nintendo and the Genesis one are the exact same game. The Super Nintendo one is actually the better of the two. I don't know if I want to own it again on the Genesis, so I'm maybe calling it quits on that goal. But Dracula on the Game Gear is actually a port of the NES game. And the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo versions are kind of like a platformer beat 'em up where you're playing as Jonathan Harker and you've got like this sword with this really long reach and you're just smacking bitches down, you know, Dracula's hose and all that kind of shit, smacking them down. This one is more like a platformer, and it reminds me a lot of Super Mario Brothers for some reason, because there's like blocks you need to break and stuff like that. And it's actually really fun. I think I might have brought it up when I did the NES stream. I have this for the NES also, that there was an emulator that was on Facebook that was like you could play in the browser. Like I remember going to my old job, going on my break, logging onto Facebook in the cafeteria, and there was this like NES emulator that was available there, and there was maybe like a handful of games, and one of them was Dracula on the NES, and I used to play it all the time. I thought it was super fun. I was like, why did I not have this game back in the day? Because I was not a big fan of licensed games back then. But you can see it's like a platformer. You're playing as Jonathan Harker, and I think you jump on people's heads in this too. Whatever. It's actually pretty fun. I'd rather play the NES game over this, but I wanted, like I said, I was trying to get all of this particular title, all the ports. Actually, no, I don't have the one on the Master System. New goal. But I also wanted to get all the games by Psygnosis, and this one was developed by Psygnosis, so that's part of that goal also. Here's an interesting one. I got this dirt cheap off of some dude on Amazon, and I don't think I'll ever see this for that price again. It's called a backlog. Oh, yes. And that is called Chicago Syndicate. Every time I bring this up, people are like, what's that? This is a spinoff from Eternal Champions. This stars Larson, the guy who looked like an old school detective in Eternal Champions. And I had no clue that this existed back when the Game Gear was relevant. And I probably would have bought it because, you know, I was all about that kind of thing back then. I found out about it just randomly looking up Game Gear games on not only eBay, but Amazon. And this one popped up, and I was like, what is that? And I did some research. I found a video about it on YouTube, and I was watching. I was like, holy crap, I did not know this game existed. I need it right now. And there was a guy selling this on Amazon for, I swear to God, like $25 complete. Now this goes for over $100, I think. But it is a side-scrolling platformer, almost like a beat-em-up, where you're playing as Larson going through Chicago trying to take down a mafia organization. It's pretty cool. I don't hear people talking about this one at all. And I say most of the time when I bring this up, people are like, what is that? Huh? But I'm super thrilled that I was able to get this when I did. There's one other spinoff out there, and it's called Experts on the Genesis, and that stars... Oh, God, the girl in the dress, the ninja one that does all the flippity flips in the game. I cannot remember her name. Venom or something? It's been a long time since I played Eternal Champions. I hear that game is absolute dog shit, but I kind of want it for the collection, so why not? This is a game that's actually in my Game Gear right now, and that's Devilish. So I found this at a store down the street from me called The Exchange. And I was not looking for Game Gear anything. I just was walking through the store, looking at the game stuff that they have. They have a lot of retro stuff there, which is why I go there. And it's usually pretty decently priced. And like they have everything in the cases, like behind glass cases that are like waist high. There's also ones that are like knee high that they usually keep the controllers and like, devices and stuff like that, like controllers, the add-ons for the consoles and stuff like that. And for some reason, they tossed this in one of those knee high cabinets. And I just happened to be looking around, and I was like, oh, is that a Game Gear game? Can I take a look at that? And I looked at the back, and I really couldn't tell what it was. The pictures on the back don't really do the game justice. So I decided to buy it because it was dirt cheap. I think it was like less than $10. I can't remember exactly. But I'm glad that I bought it because I think out of all the games I currently own in my collection, this is the one I play the most. And that's why it's actually still sitting inside of my Game Gear, because that's the last thing I was playing. And Devilish is a variation of Breakout, or like Arkanoid. You have a little paddle, you have blocks that you need to break, and there's a ball bouncing around. But the thing is, it's an adventure game version of it, where the paddle actually changes directions and the screen scrolls. So once you start breaking the blocks, the screen will start slowly scrolling down, and you have to break those blocks so you can make your way through with your paddle to keep on progressing. And eventually you'll turn left, and all of a sudden you're bouncing the ball left and right instead of up and down. And it's really kind of cool the way it works. It gets really hectic and crazy at times, but I absolutely love it. I think it's very addictive. I played the shit out of it. And then went out with Captain Algebra and Tiger Chainsaw and its Rocket Sauce from the Cartridge Club back in August. We went game hunting around Wisconsin, and I found the sequel to this that's available on the Genesis, and I talked about that in that stream, which is awesome to be able to play a more high-res version of it that gives you more of a play field, makes it kind of easier to play on a home console. So that was fantastic. I highly recommend this one. It is super fun. Nobody talks about this one either. Sage's Creation is the company that released this. And I tend to find the games that they've released, at least the ones that I have on the Genesis, really, really fun. Like, what's the video game? God, I can't think. The shmup I have where you're bugs, where you fight bugs. Bio. No, that's not it. Bio, no. And Sector X. Yeah, that's another Sage's Creation one. I put this on my Genesis games Diamonds in the Rough video. Yeah, Sage's Creation is like one that I want to know what other games they've released. Oh, trust me, Justin, I plan on doing that for not only my Game Gear but also my Lynx. Totally. Next up we have Land of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. There was a point in time where I really got into, this is probably like 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was either right before the pandemic or during when the pandemic just started, where I was like really getting into these like Mickey Mouse games because of Castle of Illusion on the Genesis. And I was like, oh, I want to get the Master System port because I hear that's awesome. I watched the Renaissance streaming that on Twitch. And I picked this up at the Midwest Gaming Classic, along with the other game in the series, which is Legend of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. And I was like, I got these like at the same time from that Atari Age table that I was talking about. And I was super thrilled. And this kind of kicked off. So this was 2018 when I bought these. And that kind of kicked off me looking for all of them. And I ended up finding a couple. I got one for the Super Nintendo. I got one for the game. What is it? The GameCube. And I think there's a couple more that I need. But super awesome platformers starring Mickey Mouse. Very reminiscent of Castle of Illusion. Haven't really put a whole lot of... I got the burpees. I haven't put a whole lot of time into these yet, but I just popped them in to make sure they worked, and it's great. But I do believe these are also available on the Master System, so I might go after those as well to put alongside my Castle of Illusion. I think Castle of Illusion is also available on the Game Gear. I might have to look into that. And then the follow-up is the sequel that's Legend of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. And is that supposed to be Geppetto from Pinocchio? I am not sure. But I tried this one out when I first got it, and it worked fine. This one, Mickey Mouse is dressed up a little bit like Robin Hood for some reason. Not sure why. I need to put time into this one as well. But yeah, super thrilled about those. In Sector X, Instructor. Next up is, had to get it because of Psygnosis. I have so many ports of this game, it is disgusting. When am I going to play all these ports? Probably never, but it was part of my collecting goals. We got Lemmings. This was developed by Psygnosis, and you can see it right there. It's really tiny, but you can see it right above where it says Game Gear. You got the little Psygnosis thing. I found this, of all places, at a half-price books. That's really out of the way. I went out there to go see I went out that way to go see a movie. I stopped at the half-price books because I got there too early, and found this for, I think it was $20, complete in box at half-price books. That's unheard of to find. I find the weirdest deals at half-price books. I don't know why. That's, like I said, it's my superpower. finding deals and people slipping on the eBays. But yeah, it's a platform puzzler game where you basically, I don't know if you're supposed to be playing like God or something, but you have a bunch of lemmings trying to work their way through a stage. Like it's almost like there's obstacles and stuff, and you have to assign tasks to certain lemmings in order to get them to progress. Like, oh, they can't get off of this platform because it's blocked off on both sides. So they're just walking back and forth. They hit a wall, they turn the other direction. You got to assign one of them to dig a hole that they can fall through. And then you have to make them use umbrellas so they won't fall through the hole and splat on the ground beneath them. Sometimes you need to make them build steps, put ladders down, all this kind of crazy stuff. It's fun for a little while at least, but like I usually get sick of it pretty quickly. But on the Game Gear, it looks okay. Like obviously the lemmings are like teeny tiny little pixels, but whatever. It's another port of a pretty decent game by Psygnosis. It's one of the ones that put them on the map, for crying out loud. No Battletoads? No. It's too expensive. I'll get it eventually. Maybe at the Midwest Gaming Classic in April. Next up is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. Picked this up at the Midwest Gaming Classic, I think in 2019. And it's really cool. This whole box is like metallic. And even on the back, it's like embossed with gold. It's so reflective. It's so shiny. I never watched Power Rangers when it was a thing. I was too old for it. I was sitting there. My neighbors were obsessed with it. And they were always talking about it, screaming about it outside. And I was just kind of like, nah, I'm good. But I have pretty much all the games available about this franchise for some reason nowadays. But I especially was interested in finding the ones based on the movie because you know me. And this one, I think, is the one-on-one fighting game. Yeah, choose from all 6 Power Rangers. Each Power Ranger has his or own unique moves and power plays. Yeah, I think this is the one-on-one fighting game. This franchise confuses me. It's like one on the Super Nintendo is a beat 'em up, and then the same game based on like the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers based on the show. On the Super Nintendo is a beat 'em up, but on the Genesis is a one-on-one fighting game. The movie game on the Super Nintendo is a one-on-one fighting game, but on the Genesis, the movie version is a beat 'em up. I think this is a one-on-one fighting game. They confused the hell out of me. But it's not bad. It's great. The box was a little damaged, which is why I got it for a decent deal at the convention. It's also why I jumped on it. So there's that. But of course, I had to get these because you know me. You're too bold to play current retro prices. Yeah. Mortal Kombat. These games don't translate very well to controllers that only have 2 buttons on them, like the Game Boy and the Game Gear. But when you compare the Game Boy version of Mortal Kombat to the Game Gear version, I will take the Game Gear version any day of the week. It looks better. It plays better. It's still choppy as hell, but it's still not as good as the console ports, obviously. But it's not horrible. The sprites are actually kind of big. They do look pretty decent. They're animated really choppily, though, which is not cool. But like I said, only 2 buttons on the controller. How are you supposed to do the high kicks and the low kicks and all that kind of stuff in it? It seems to work itself out kind of while you're playing it. Like it's almost like the game can anticipate what you want to do. It's weird. The only thing is, I think if I remember correctly, there's a limited, like certain characters are missing. It doesn't have a picture, but I think there's at least one character that's missing from this. And I can't remember who. It might be Johnny Cage, I think. Yeah, it might be Johnny Cage that's not in here. On the back, all they're showing is Liu Kang, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Raiden, and Sonya. And I don't think Johnny Cage is in here. But whatever. Oh, what's up, Retro Coop? I didn't realize you came in. Oh, yeah, I see you way up there. How you doing? Those Power Ranger games are pretty fun. Yeah, as much as I'm not a fan of the franchise itself, the games are pretty fun, I will admit. Also have Mortal Kombat 2, my favorite fighting game of all time. Had to have this, and just like the Game Boy version of this, I would rather play the Game Gear version because, number 1, it's in color. Number 2, it plays better, it looks better, it sounds better. Looks a little more effort was put into this than the Game Boy port, but it still does not control all that great. But, you know, there's no Mortal Kombat. It's fantastic. And like Mortal Kombat, and just like Star Trek, Mortal Kombat's a little bit like sex. Even when it's pretty bad, it's still pretty good. And I bought this at what's it called? People Play Games, my old retro store that shut down. When they were shutting down, I bought this. They had like their big sale. You know, they're going on a business sale. And I picked this up for, I do believe, a whopping $2. And normally I wouldn't give a shit about sports games, but this is one sport I can actually see myself playing because I actually do enjoy the video game versions of it. And that is NHL All-Star Hockey. Like I said, I got this for, I think, $2. And it's basically a port of like NHL. I think this is actually on the Saturn too, but it's not the EA ones. I think there's ones by Sega. Yeah, Sega Sports. Duh. I don't remember. I don't have it for the Genesis, so I can't comment. But it's just a standard soccer game. Nothing special. It's actually not bad. Little hockey game on the go. Quick little skirmishes. Quick little games. It's fine. Dog poop versus cat poop. Yeah, I didn't. Well, one of my goals is to get all the Mortal Kombat things, which is why I have something that I'm going to be talking about a little bit later. It's the only reason it's in my collection. But yeah, if I have to play one on the go, that's the Game Gear ones are the ones I want to play. I think Mortal Kombat 3 is also available on the Game Gear. I know it's available on the Master System, but it's a Brazil exclusive. Those clear boxes, retro protection. I got them off of eBay. Yeah, might be. I usually order them off of one specific seller on eBay, but it's been maybe 2 years since I bought any of them. And you can see there are some of them that are still not in a protector that I need to get. So you just spoil it. Ninja Gaiden. I wanted to get this because I thought it was going to be a port of the arcade game, which is available on the links. Turns out no. There is a Ninja Gaiden game on the Master System, and this is a port of that game, but that is not like the Ninja Gaiden games that we got on the NES. It is another side-scrolling platformer beat-em-up, but it is not like the NES games. It is its own thing. And it's actually pretty fun. I do want to get the Master System version just so I could play, the full-screen version, because the thing about the Game Gear and the Game Boy, too, is like everything is like really zoomed in when you compare it to the console version. Like, one of the big complaints about Sonic the Hedgehog on the Game Gear is that it is so zoomed in, you really can't see the enemies coming. So you'll take damage, and it makes the game less fun because you don't have any like foresight of what's coming up. Same thing with this, but whatever. I got this dirt cheap off of eBay. Another one of the examples of me getting shit off of eBay, like catching somebody slipping. Like I said, for a little while, that was my superpower. But I remember people were selling Ninja Gaiden for, I want to say, over $100 when I was looking for it, and then I just randomly find some guy that's selling it for like $40, and I was like, click, mine. Next up, we have Psychic World. I do believe this is also available on the Master System, and this one is one of my new favorites. I did not have this one back in the day, but when I got back into collecting for the Game Gear in anticipation of getting my Game Gear adapter, I probably should show that. The Game Gear adapter that I have for my Retro Freak. This is how I play most of my Game Gear games, at least before I got the Game Gear itself. But Retro Freak released this adapter called the Gear Converter, and it lets you play Master System, Game Gear, both the card games and the cartridge games, SG-1000 games, and Mark III games, both card and cartridge. It shows it on the back, all the different types of games you can use on it. And when I got this one, I was playing this one pretty much exclusively for a while. It's a side-scrolling platformer, I don't know, adventure game, where you're playing as this girl, and I just remember you going through a bunch of dungeons and stuff, and it's actually really fun. You have like these ESP skills that you pick up as you go, and it's really, really fun. I need to spend more time playing it. I should probably play through this. I haven't played this since I got this thing. Oh, man, I need to set aside some time and play through this stuff. Oh, that's, like Justin said, that's my freaking backlog right there. Whoa, shit, don't do it! I dropped one. I am also so tired, I'm getting loopy. Whoop, whoop. Come over here. You're too far away. So we've got Shinobi, and also Shinobi 2, The Silent Fury. These are not ports of the arcade game like the Master System version of Shinobi is. These are their own thing. These are just basically side-scrolling, maybe a run and gun because you're basically just throwing the shurikens back, all the time. This one is not the greatest. This, I do believe, was a launch game for the Game Gear, and I did not have either of these back in the day. It's all right, and there's a weird story about these too, about the pricing on these. And then there's Shinobi 2 Silent Fury, and this is the awesome one. This one reminds me like a toned-down version of Revenge of Shinobi on the Genesis. There's more going on. You have more moves and abilities. And the bosses and the enemies are like, you can see like there's a big ass spider boss up there. There's like more going on in this game. It's more flashy. It shows off more of what the Game Gear is capable of. But the thing was, when I was interested in picking these up, at the time, this was the expensive one. This was the dirt cheap one. So I picked this one up when I could. I think I got it for like $35 or $40, and I was like, that's on the cheap end at that point in time. And it was strange because nobody was talking about the sequel. I'm like, why is the sequel the one that's more expensive? So I picked this one up. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like I look at my wish list or my watch list on eBay, and all of a sudden this is going for $40 when it was going for over $100. And now this is the one that was going for over $100. So they swapped places for some reason, price-wise. So I jumped on this one. This one was the cheap one. And I think I paid pretty much the same. I was like $40, $45 for this. And I was super happy that I got this one. This is my favorite of the two. I wish I would have had that back in the day. I probably would have loved the shit out of it. Got to have at least one of these games in the collection. And this one is actually still sealed. I have not opened it because of all the shit I hear about people ragging on it. Shinobi is sweet. Yep. And that is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. If you watch Stop Skeletons from Fighting, he did a bunch of videos about like Sonic the Hedgehog ports all over the place. And he talked about the Game Gear ones, and that was right before I bought this. And this is what I was talking about. Like, it is so zoomed in, it's hard to like react when an enemy shows up because they're like right in your face. You can kind of see it on the back, like how big Sonic is compared to what you see on the screen. It's like you barely have any reaction time. But like I said, it's still sealed. And I got this for a whopping like $7, still sealed. Like, they could not give these away. It is still wrapped. I've actually found multiple copies of like Aladdin and the Lion King for the Game Gear still sealed. I was thinking about buying those, but I was like, I already have those on other consoles. No big deal. I might get them because why not? But I'll eventually play this. But yeah, there's Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 on the Game Gear. I need to look for Sonic 2. There's also Sonic Triple Trouble. And I think there's like 4 Sonic games on the Game Gear, I want to say. I talked about this one in my 31 Days of Licensed Games series that I did back in January. And this was... What was the name of that episode? It was like games that don't properly represent the license. You'll see why in a sec. That is Stargate. So, you like I said in that video, you think Stargate and you're like, action movie, science fiction, traveling to distant parts of the galaxy, fighting evil Egyptian aliens and stuff like that. You know, there's Kurt Russell, he's got machine guns, and there's army people in it, and there's aerial battles because the aliens have those big flying machines. It's going to be a crazy action game. And then you buy this and you're like, no, it's like playing Tetris. Actually, more like playing Weltris. You have like this grid. You can see it right here. There's a grid, and basically all these little squares in the center are like sections of the galaxy you need to occupy, and you occupy them by doing the puzzle sections. And you have like tiles that start off right in your face, and they fall down the well, away from you. And each side of the tile has like an Egyptian figure on it, an icon. You need to match 3 of them to get them to go away. And it's like, what? Huh? I'm having a fight with Ra. You can see right here. Daniel Jackson's having a fight with Ra in a well. With tiles. That's exciting. Not exactly what you want in a Stargate game. If you want a really good Stargate game, I highly recommend the one on the Super Nintendo and even the Genesis. Those are ports of each other. They're the same game, just one looks like a Genesis game, one looks like a Super Nintendo game. But they're actually pretty fun. But this one, it's like, what the hell? And the reason I picked this one up was it Daria Plays? I think that's the name of her channel, Daria Plays. I asked her to do a collaboration on one of my big things that I used to do on my channel. I think it was one of the bad video games based on movies. And this was the game that she chose. She's like, I hate it, but I love it. And I really want to talk about it. But then she kind of bowed out. She said she didn't have time to do it. And it got me curious about the game. And I bought a copy of it. I was like, oh, I see what you're talking about. Ooh. Next up, we have, this one is still sealed too. That is Star Trek Generations Beyond the Nexus. One of my goals still to this day is to get all the console Star Trek games. I remember seeing this all the time at Best Buy. Every time I would go there, I would see it. And I was like, nope, I'm not falling for it because of who released it. Is it still sealed? Yeah, it is. It's just the flap is free, but it still has the seal on it. Yeah, so this is released by Absolute, and Absolute did the Star Trek The Next Generation games that came out on the NES, and I do not like that game. They also released some Abrams tank game that I thought was kind of garbage. So as much as I love Star Trek, it's one of my favorite things in the whole world, I was not willing to buy a copy of this for this console or the Game Boy. So I waited until I was an adult and I had the money to frivolously spend money that I probably shouldn't be spending. But it's like, just like that NES game, it's a bunch of like different mini games. So you have stuff where you're on the bridge and you're doing like target practice-y, wing commandery things with the phasers and the photon torpedoes trying to take out the Klingons, the Duras sisters. And you've got some, what is that? I can't even see it. Beam down for phaser combat with cunning Romulan warriors. Oh, so that's some side-scrolling shit. I wonder if the transporter minigame is in here where it's like playing whack-a-mole. I don't know. I have not played it. So, yeah, I'll eventually get around to trying it out, but not really high on priorities because Absolute kind of butchered that license. And how do I know that game is probably going to be crap? Because I also have that Next Generation game I was talking about on the Game Gear. This game is poopy. I have it on the NES also. It is not fun. I also have it on the Game Boy. I have way too many copies of this shitty game. And that's the one I was talking about where you have like a transporter minigame where it's like playing whack-a-mole. There's a like Let's Enter Orbit minigame where you're flying through rings like Superman 64. There's a couple of times where you're using the phasers and photons or whatever to take out some Romulans. It's not a fun game. It is kind of shitty. But it's Star Trek, and like I said, Star Trek is a little bit like sex. Even when it's pretty bad, it's pretty good. But I have way too many copies of that. And then we have Star Wars, which is a port of the NES game, just like the Master System is. Well, I can't talk, man. And it's, if you didn't like the NES game, you're not going to like this because it's just on a smaller screen and you're a little bit more zoomed in. But it's the exact same game. Same music and everything. Kind of craptastic, if you ask me, because I'm not a fan of those NES. The NES or the Famicom version of this game. But whatevs, it's Star Wars, and one of my goals was to get all the Star Wars games, so I have to have it. Have to have it. Do I have? There's also, I think on the Game Gear, I also need to get Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi. That's a kind of a pricey one. I do have that on the Game Boy. And then here's one of the first games I ever bought for my console back in the day. This is one of the two first games I bought, and that's Streets of Rage. So I immediately was trying to get a copy of this back into my collection when I was collecting for the Game Gear. And I finally got it and popped it into my GG converter. And I was like, oh, I do not remember it being this bad. This is an awesome game on the Genesis. Have never played it on the Master System. This is a port of the Master System game. It is choppy, and the hitboxes are kind of crappy, and it's just not, it's not good. I don't like it. Never got into the shoes either. Huh? Shoes? What the hell are you talking about, man? Tight. Streets of Rage. Oh, yeah, it's not good. And there's also a port of Streets of Rage 2, which I really do want, but I'm probably going to be very disappointed also because I can't imagine that game, which is awesome on the Genesis, being good on the Game Gear. Yeah, it's like, I don't think all three characters are here. I think it's only it's only Blaze. It's not Axel. I can't remember what the dude with the blue pants' name is on the front. Shit. Damn it. I am blanking on his name. Yeah, it is Axel. Yeah, it's Axel or Blaze. Yeah. 2 characters instead of the 3 to choose from, which is also a bummer. But it has a 2-player mode. I think you have to link the... Yeah, with the link cable. You need a gear-to-gear cable in order to link them up to play 2-player. That's kind of... Yeah. How are you going to do it otherwise? No. Yeah, not good. Not good at all. Not as good as I remember it being. I remember it being awesome back in the day, but nah. Next up, licensed game. Here's another one that not a lot of people know about, or at least talk about, and that is Surf Ninjas. Remember that movie that came out in the 90s? With the little kid from not Enter the Dragon, The Last Dragon, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. And Leslie Nielsen looks like Kano because he's like half robot. It's not good. Tone Loc's in it. And there's a little kid that uses a Game Boy to tell the future. That's a movie that was made with money that people wrote and starred in. Why? The game is way better than the movie. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but your characters are kind of small, but it is really, really fun. It's way better than the movie ever will be. I like this one a lot. And the cool thing about this, well, I don't know, it's cool. The game that I bought off of eBay, because I was looking for this for a while because I had this one back in the day and I really liked it. I bought this before I saw the movie. The game that I bought off, or the copy that I bought off of eBay, I did not test it when it first showed up. And I want to say like a year went by and I was like, oh, I should probably play that Surf Ninjas game again. I remember liking that quite a bit back in the day, Put it in my game converter thing for the Retro Freak, and it didn't work at all. Tried cleaning it multiple times. It would kind of show some things, but it was just glitching like crazy. So I did what any self-respecting YouTuber does when you have a broken game. You send it to John Riggs and ask him to try to do one of his little fixes on it because he makes the videos about trying to bring dead games back to life. And he actually did an episode about trying to fix my copy of Surf Ninjas, and he could not get it to work. I don't know if it was... rusted or something on the inside. He just could not get it to work. So I ended up buying the cartridge separately and added it back to the box that I had, and that one worked. But it is a really fun game. If you have a Game Gear, pick it up. It is super fun. Kino. Not too bad. Yeah, I want to try it, but I don't have high hopes. A leg of mine that no longer works. If there's one thing I remember from the movie, I've only seen the movie once. If there's one thing I remember outside of the little kid using the Game Gear to tell the future, it was Tone Loc getting like a Vulcan neck pinch by somebody. And he has that kind of deep voice. The women would call it sexy. And like he gets like the Vulcan neck pinch and he goes, "Oh yeah, good night, baby," and then passes out. That's the only thing I remember from that movie. Because it was so stupid, it made me laugh like quite a bit. And then the last game that I have for my Game Gear is one of the other ones that I bought on my when I first bought the console. That is Vampire Master of Darkness. I didn't know anything about this when it came out because I just wanted to buy it because it's a horror game. I love horror games. Give it to me now. And turns out it's a port of a Master System game called Master of Darkness, hence why it's Master of Darkness on the front. But we never got Master of Darkness over here for the Master System. It was in the UK and a Japanese exclusive. I wish it did come out over here because I think it would have been a pretty big seller because what this game is a ripoff of Castlevania. You're playing as this British guy walking along the River Thames. You got a cane. You can beat the shit out of enemies that are coming after you. You're going after Dracula. First boss you fight is Jack the Ripper. There's little mime masks all over the place. Instead of candles that you hit to get power-ups, you can get a gun as a power-up, a sword, an axe, I think. And it's actually very fun. I love this game, which is why I really went after the Master System game when I did. Get back into collecting for that console, too, because I wanted to play the full version of it. I like this one so much. I actually turned Radical Reggie onto this game. He didn't really know anything about it. And then I did a video about games you should play on Halloween. That was one of the ones I talked about. And he was like, "What's this game now? Huh? Why do I not have that?" I was like, "Well, you're welcome." So that's it for Game Gear. Time for a little breaky break. You're lucky I ain't farting over here. So the game I'm going to add in that I did not have listed in the consoles I was going to talk about today, it's the only game I have for this console currently, and I think starting next week, I might start actively looking for this console and collecting for it again. Why? Because I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently. That's the Atari Jaguar. So I did have an Atari Jaguar back in the day. There was that game store I was talking about in the Super Nintendo streams called Die Hard Game Fan. I think it was licensed off the magazine. That was where the guy talked me into buying Super Metroid when I really wasn't a fan of the Metroid franchise at that point in time. This is where I got the guy mad at me. So I used to go in there all the time when I was bored, didn't have anything to do at home, because just like Funko Land, this Die Hard Game Fan store had like the newest consoles set up in the store, and you could just come in, and if they had the games available that were like used, so they were out of the box, you can ask to try them out and play them before you buy. So he had a Jaguar hooked up, and he had a couple of games available. The only thing was the day that I went there to do that, this dude that runs the store, who owned the store, brought his bratty little kid in. And so I was like, hey, can I try out the Jaguar? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. What games do you want? And I was like, well, I want to play Tempest 2000 if you have it. I want to play Trevor McFur. And I wanted to play Cybermorph, which is the game that came with the console, because I was seriously considering buying one because my friend Charlie, Epic Die Studio, comes in the chats every once in a while, had gone to his girlfriend's family's house, and his girlfriend's brother had a Jaguar, and he brought it over for this picnic that they had, and they played Tempest 2000 like all day, and he was telling me how great Tempest 2000 was. He's like, dude, the music that is coming out of this cartridge, like, it's unbelievable that it's there. Like, how does a cartridge playing this music? It sounds like it's off of a CD. It's awesome. And the game itself is super fun. That's why he played it all day. And I was like, oh, I like Tempest. I like techno music. At least back then I really did. I was like, interest peaked. So that's when I ran over to that Die Hard Game Fan store. So I'm sitting there and I'm playing. The first game I played was Cybermorph. And this dude that ran the store, his little kid, who I think was like maybe 8 or 9, was sitting at the station next to me playing something else. I don't know what. I think it was the Super Nintendo. And he would keep on like leaning over to see what I was playing. And he would tell me, he's like, that game is garbage. And I looked at him and I was just like, sure. And I would keep on playing because I wanted to try it out first. And he's like, why are you still playing that crap? And I'm like, are you trying to make your dad money? Because you're failing. And he's like, went back to playing whatever it was. So then I tried out Trevor McFur, and I really did not like Trevor McFur. So I'm playing this, horizontally scrolling craptastic shmup, and he's just like, dude, why are you still playing these games? That the Jaguar sucks. And I just looked at him, I was like, will you shut up? And he goes, Dad, he told me to shut up. And he looks at me, he's like, why are you talking to my kid like that? I'm like, do you want to make money today or not? Because your kid is trying to not sell me a Jaguar over here. And he's like, stop talking to the damn customers, will you? And the kid's like, oh. So I'm like, okay, I'm done with Trevor McFur. Can I play Tempest 2000? I'm sitting there and I was into it. And the kid kept on going like, I don't know why you're still playing that trash. And I was like, what did Daddy say? And he would go and go back to playing whatever. He was a little brat. I hated whenever I would go in there and the kid was there, I would usually turn around and walk right back out because I did not want to have to deal with this little brat. Why he brought this little kid to the store who basically was costing his dad money by basically saying everything in the store that his dad was selling was shit. You got your entire collection for $35. Well, I eventually did buy a Jaguar. I had a big library. I want to say at least 20 to 25 games for it. And the cool thing about that was, cool back then, I actually did have all of my games complete in the box because the cartridges, you couldn't put them on a shelf and stack them up like a Super Nintendo game because they did not have end labels to tell you what game that was. They're all shaped the same. The labels were all hidden. So the only way I knew what games I had was to keep the boxes. And I had I want to say 25 games maybe. And I had a lot of shitty ones. I even bought Trevor McFur for some reason. I really loved Tempest. I really loved Alien vs. Predator. I'd love to get Alien vs. Predator back in my collection. I almost bought it at the Midwest Gaming Classic this year. What other games was I into? Bubsy on the Jaguar was pretty fun. Raiden was pretty fun. But like I had the fighting games. The fighting games on the Jaguar were trash. There was Ultra Vortec and what was the other one? I don't remember what the second one. I had both of those, and then there was that one that looked like Virtua Fighter that I never bought because I'd gotten rid of it by that point. But I had the console for like a year and a half, and I started losing interest in it. And at this point in time, I was working at a video store that was right around the corner from my house, and I asked my boss, I was like, look, I'm thinking of selling this video game console that I have. Would you mind if I like brought it to work and like put it on the counter with a price tag on it to see if anyone here wants to buy it? And he was like, yeah, it's no big deal. So I put it up for $250. I sold all the games to Funkoland. And I had it up for $250, and it came with the copy of Cybermorph and everything. And some guy after about a week and a half of it being on the counter, some guy bought it when I was on vacation. Like I had been gone for a week. I come back and I'm like, "Where's my Jaguar?" And they're like, "Oh, some dude bought it. Here's the $250, plus the tax or whatever." Or no, there was no tax. It was just $250. Here's the $250 that the guy gave us. And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome! Free money!" And then like a week after that, the dude who bought it called back and he's like, "Who's the guy who was selling the Jaguar?" And it was me who answered the phone. I was like, "That's me." And he's like, "I want to bring it back for a refund." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Because this sucks." And I'm like, "Sorry. I had written on the price tag thing that I put on the box, all sales final." I was like, "Well, sorry, dude. You bought it. You saw what was on the label. It said all sales final. You're stuck with it." He's like, "Fuck you." He never came back in to rent from the store again. And that was the last time I owned a Jaguar. So my buddy Felix, the Brett that I was talking about earlier, who sold me the Game Gear that I now have, like sent me one of the pictures of like a big lot of games that he picked up from somewhere in Ohio where he lives. And this caught my eye, and a Sega Saturn game that I'll show you once I get to that console. And I bought both of these together, and that was Tempest 2000 complete in the box. My all-time favorite game for this console. Probably one of like 4 games that I really, really like for this console. So I wasn't going to pass it up. He sold it to me for, I think, $45, and I was like, that's definitely cheaper than it was going for complete in the box online because he's my bro. And I'm super thrilled that I have it in my collection. I just don't have a console to play it on, but I do have this game in other forms on other consoles that I can play. So there's that. So I'm thinking maybe this month I'm going to start actively looking for a Jaguar to add to my collection so I can start playing these again. Ba-bang! But it is a port of the arcade game, just psychedelic AF. All it is, you have like these webs of different configurations. You play as a little ship that travels around the outer edge of the webs. There we go. Follow my finger. That travels along the outside of the webs, and you're killing the creatures that are moving towards you from the far end of it. You get power-ups. You get like an option that follows you around that gives you extra shots. You can upgrade your shots. You get like these like a screen-clearing bomb kind of thing. And then you can find these bonus levels where you're like flying around with this really cool like red-orange sky overhead, and you're flying through rings to get points. The music in this game is absolutely fantastic. I actually bought the soundtrack on CD from that Die Hard Game Fan store. They actually had a physical copy of the CD soundtrack that I bought there, and I loved it. I listened to it all the time. I love the music in this game. Like I said, it does not sound like it has any business coming out of a cartridge at all. And then the Nintendo 64 did that. Buyer's remorse in the 90s, huh? Yeah. Where did you learn to fly? Yeah, I remember that shit. That drove me nuts. I hated that game. Oh, that was like 2002? Yeah. Back then, I wish... That was when I was collecting for the consoles back then. That was when I got my TurboGrafx 16 and like 10 or 15 games for like $200. Yeah, that was when game collecting was dirt... Excuse me, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. That was when it was dirt cheap. Woo! I got the hiccups. I need to do something. I'll be right back, guys. my way of getting rid of the hiccups is to hold my breath. So I don't need you to see me turning red. Was he dying? No. Yeah, I would like to get a Jaguar back into my collection at some point. Hopefully soon. Definitely going to be looking for Alien vs. Predator. That was the other game I played this shit out of. I beat it both or all three ways, as the Alien, as the Predator, and as the Marine. That was super fun. I don't know if it'll still hold up nowadays, but back in 1994 when I bought it, that was the shit. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Tiger Gamecom. I still don't own the console. I don't know if I ever will. So I went to Half Price Books by my work, where I was getting all the games before COVID basically annihilated that place. And one day I walk in and there's like three of them? 1, 2, yeah, 3 games are sitting there complete in the box for the Gamecom. And one of them is part of a collection of games I'm trying to get. Like, I want all the games from that series, no matter what console they're on, as long as it's a home console, a portable, or like one you hook up to, blah, 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 one you hook up to your television. Oh my God. My tongue. And they were dirt cheap. I think they were like $5 each. So I was like, oh shit, you sons of bitches. You knew I was coming. Let's take them home. So I did not have the console. Like I said, there are like 3 versions of it. The Gamecom is by Tiger, the people making those stupid LCD games that I had way too many of back in the day. I knew they sucked back then, but I still wanted more. Don't ask me why. But yeah, it was the big thing about it was it had a touch screen. It looks like a Game Gear, but it's silver. It's a little bit taller than a Game Gear. It had a touch screen. It had a stylus. And you could play it online. I guess you had to hook it up to a dial-up server or a dial-up cable or whatever, and you can play it online. It had like a notebook option. It had like like a calendar and a clock and all that kind of stuff. And it was like an organizer or whatever they were called back then. I guess it was kind of cool, but it just, you kind of need games to play on this damn thing. And from what I understood, the games were not good. So I never gave it a second thought back in the day. I remember I went to the KB Toys that I was always talking about buying all the discounted clearance NES games back with my lunch money back when I was a kid and all that. I remember I walked in there and I want to say the Gamecom had been out for maybe 6 months. And I don't remember what the price was at the start. It might have been $200, maybe $150 or whatever. And they were selling it in the store for like $35. And I was like, oh, it's that bad, huh? Not getting my money. So I never bought it. But then I find this one specific game and 2 of his brothers at Half Price Books, and the OCD collector in me was like, get them. And then I bought a couple more because I started flirting with the idea of getting a complete collection for this console, because it turns out there are not very many games. There's like 20 games or 25 games, and I was finding them really cheap, but now they're really expensive because of COVID. So let's get into the ones I do have. And the console is black and white, by the way. It's black and white, and from what I understand, this thing does not have a very good music chip. It does not have a good processor in it for graphics. Most of the games are silent. Like, there might be some sound effects, but most of the games don't have music, which is stupid. But they managed to get a bunch of really good licenses, which is what they thought was going to sell the console, but it actually turned more people away because, like, how is that going to work on that little thing? Eventually, they released, like, a backlight version. I think it had, like, a blue backlight in it, but that didn't help. If I do get one of these consoles, I'll definitely get the one with the backlight. But the first one I have is Duke Nukem 3D. I picked this one up at the People Play Games that was closing down. I got this when they were closing down. I remember I was at the register checking out with my stacks of things that I was getting, and I just happened to look past the clerk that was ringing me up because it was taking him a while, and I saw this sitting right behind him on a shelf along the wall. I was like, oh, and by the way, that too. Because, like I said, everything in the store was discounted that day, and plus I got even more of a discount for being like a patron of the place for years. So, yeah, I think I got this for like $7. And it is a port of the computer version of Duke Nukem 3D. It is a first-person shooter. It is a very basic and, stripped down first-person shooter. I don't think you have very many guns, but it's there. And they said, what was it? Derek from Stop Skeletons from Fighting did like a review of a bunch of the games for this console because he did like a retrospective on the Gamecom. And he was like, out of all the games that he has played, this is probably his favorite, even though it's not that great either. But, you know, what the hell? It's impressive that they actually made a first-person shooter on that. They couldn't even do that on the Game Boy. But this thing came out like in 97 or something like that. So at that point, why couldn't they? Because Tiger does not know what the hell they're doing. And they made a crappy console. Waiting for your Atari 50 collection to come. Want to check out the Tempest Jag games without buying the console. Yeah, I might end up doing that too. I'll check with Captain Knight trying to see if he has one for sale. Oh yeah, that would be great. I've never seen a Gamescom in real life. I don't think they had one at the Midwest Gaming Classic, and it was still boxed, but their version, I think it's like the one that has the light inside, the backlight. That comes in like a bubble packaging instead of a box. Like the original one I remember being in a box. And then like when they decided to get cheap with it because it wasn't selling, it just came in like a bubble package, and somebody could have just like punched that thing and broken. Next up, this is one of the ones I found at Half Price Books that day. And that is Fighters Mega Mix. They got Duke Nukem's license. They got Sega Games licensing, but Sega didn't make this. Sega didn't make any of these games that I have from them or that they released for this console. Other companies did. They just bought the license to make games for it for this console because from what it sounds like, Tiger made every single game for their console. No other game developers actually signed on to develop for it. Tiger basically, the way they were licensing games for those LCD games of theirs, they were doing it the same way here, and they're developing on their own, which is why these games are all terrible. But this one, I think, has a very limited roster of fighters compared to the Sega Saturn game, but you can play as the car from Daytona, USA in this. That's one of the characters they left in here. But it's a one-on-one fighting game. It is a Sega Saturn game normally, and it is like their Super Smash Brothers version, where it's all Sega characters from all their fighting game franchises put together into one game. And on the Saturn game, there's a bunch of unlockable characters, such as the car from Daytona USA, but he's in here already. Doesn't look good. At least the stuff that was on Stop Skeletons from Fighting didn't look very good. He did not talk about this one, so I can't comment. And this one is The Lost World of Jurassic Park. It's a licensed game. Sure, why not? And I got this for like $5 on eBay. And it looks like a side-scrolling run and gun with dinosaurs. Can't really tell because I can't play it. I could probably look up some footage online, but why would I? So it does not look that great, but like I said, I got this dirt cheap off of eBay. So why not? What's up, gamer? How's it going? Welcome. This is the one that I saw at Half Price Books that made me start collecting for this damn thing. When you see it, you'll know. It's Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Of course I had to have this. I'm trying to get all the Mortal Kombat games. One thing I haven't shown you is how, or what the size of these cartridges that this thing come on. This box is this big, right? That big. The manuals look like a Game Boy manual. The cartridges, on the other hand, are teeny tiny. Teeny, teeny, tiny. At least they have an end label. That's kind of cool. But the cartridge is so small, and it obviously does not have a lot of memory because these games, I've watched footage of them, and they are shitty as hell. Like, who programmed these things? And on Stop Skeletons from Fighting, he did review this one when he was doing his little retrospective thing. And this one, why would you make a game based on Mortal Kombat Trilogy, which is like all of the characters from the 3 Mortal Kombat games plus Mortal Kombat or Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and some extra ones on top of that for the PlayStation version? Why would you port that to this console? The cartridges barely have any memory, and on top of that, just cut down the roster from there. So you have like not even half of the amount of characters. You can see it right there. That's not even half the amount of characters that are available on the other ports of this game, or the other versions of this game. It makes no sense to port this at all. And on top of that, Derek said that the controls in this are absolutely terrible. And that's when he was like, I'd rather play the Game Gear versions of these games than this, because this is horrible. And even like the box art on the front is like god-awful. It's like they took the artwork from the cover of a GamePro magazine and then just plastered it onto the logo. It looks horrible. It is the cheapest looking shit, and the game does not look good at all. But that's why I started collecting for this console, because they had that. And then there's this awesome game, not on this console. Derek on Stop Skeletons from Fighting reviewed this one also, and it's like a big WTF. Like I said, Tiger was using all the licenses that they had gotten for their little LCD games, and then were developing their own ports of them for their shitty little console. And the thing about this is, it is trying to be like the home console versions. There is a little bit of scaling and all that, but for the most part, it's a side-scrolling action game, but it's hard to gauge like what plane you're on compared to your enemies. So when you decide to shoot them, you're actually going to hit them or not. But why is there a picture of the zombie turning its head from the original Resident Evil game when this is part 2? I don't know. It does not look good, but he says Derek on his video said that he thought that this was the most interesting game for the console because it's like a what were they thinking kind of thing, and you just want to keep playing it to see how they'll screw up the next part or the next part of the game. Keep running out of breath. Yeah, whatever. I got that off of eBay dirt cheap. And this was the third game that I found at Half Price Books when I found the Mortal Kombat trilogy. And this is probably the only one that might be good. The Gamecom is scary enough. I might buy one just to have it. And the one that might be okay is Williams Arcade Classics. I don't know how they could screw this up. I really don't. So it's a port of the PlayStation 1 game that has, what is it? It's a bunch of classic Williams Arcade games. It's Joust, Defender, Robotron 2084, Defender 2, and Sinistar. How do you screw that up? Unless the scrolling and it's so choppy that it makes it impossible to play. But like, I would just get this for Joust because I absolutely love Joust. It's one of my favorite all-time arcade games. So there's that. And like I said, these are all $5 at that store. So I said, why the hell not? Animation and sound effects from the originals. Like I said, most of these didn't even have any music. I don't think Resident Evil 2 has any music. I don't think Duke Nukem has any music. I don't think any of these did in the review that Derek did on his channel. But whatever. So there's that. And that's all the games I have for the Gamecom. Damn. Wish I had more. Sarcasm. So yeah, that's it for my video tonight, my stream. Little longer than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be over in about 45 minutes. It's a slow car crash. Yeah, but you know, it is what it is. I added that Jaguar game in just so I had something else to talk about, so I don't have to mix it into another console. Because next one is definitely going to be the 3DO, and that's one of my favorite underrated consoles all time. So next week, next Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Central, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking because I have quite a big 3DO collection. Let me check my app over here to see exactly how many of these games for this console I actually do have. Because where I'm sitting, it looks like it's a lot. For the 3DO, I have exactly 60 games, and they are in the box. Those long-ass, awkward boxes. But I love the 3DO. It's, like I said, one of my favorite underrated consoles, so I'll be glad to talk about that next week. Neo Geo Pocket Color? No, don't have it. Don't have it at all. So I will be back next Thursday with the 3DO stream. I'm not going to split that in half. I think I'll just do it all in one shot. That'll be a long one. That'll probably be like a 3-hour stream. So yeah, 8:30 p.m. Central next Thursday. I'll be back with that one. I will be back tomorrow with another short. I don't remember which one it is, but it's one of the ones that I filmed like weeks ago. So yeah, I'll upload that hopefully around noon. I think I'll be able to hack that. Yeah, probably around noon or 1 o'clock Central. So keep an eye out for that. And you got 46. I got you beat, brah. Not that it's a competition, but that's awesome. I'm sure you have pretty much all the same ones I have. Yeah. Definitely Demolition Man. I also wanted to put a feeler out. I talked about this in a stream earlier. I've been talking about streaming the Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I'm going to be doing with Mondane and the Game Grinder and a couple of my, like 4 of my other friends. Should I stream it here or should I stream it on Twitch? I'm thinking Twitch. It seems like there's more of an audience for that kind of thing on Twitch. There are so many channels that stream D&D stuff there, and a lot of them get a lot of views. So I'm thinking I might start using my Twitch channel to stream the D&D stuff instead of here and keep this strictly video gamey and movie stuff. But if not, I can stream it here too. Maybe I'll do the little splitty thing and have it stream in both places. We'll see how that works out. So yeah, that's coming up in a few weeks. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait. So I'll talk to you all next time. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I need to go and have something to eat. I'm dying over here. So I will talk to you later. Have a good night, everybody. Stay safe. I will talk to you next time. Chris, the old ass retro gamer, out. And there was no Peter tonight. I'm sad now. That's a great idea, Mondane. Making little highlight reel shorts for the channel. I like it.